Toulson again, a rare miss. Ball on the floor. Up ahead, Jacoby Colt. Grand Canyon for the third straight year are the WAC champions.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 43 and the penultimate episode of our 2025-26 College Hoops season preview series. If you missed yesterday's episode, I had my good friend Justin Michael on from DNVR to preview the Colorado State season. Obviously, it's a team I know really well. Got to go up to practice earlier this week. We'll be at one of their couple of their games here in November as the Rams get going. But back talking about another team I'm looking forward to watching from afar for this season. Kind of bummed they're not coming to Fort Collins as part of the Mountain West schedule this year, but CSU will go down there, I think in early January. But we're talking about the Grand Canyon Lopes today, their first year in the Mountain West, coming off another impressive season under Bryce Drew. 26 wins last year, made the NCAA Tournament for the fourth time in Coach Drew's tenure, which is 5 years now, entering year 6. They're picked fourth in the Mountain West preseason poll with a pair of players on the preseason All-Mountain West team with transfers Jaden Henley and Brian Moore Jr. So going to be a lot to talk about today. But before we get into today's episode with another great guest, make sure to like the podcast or subscribe wherever you're listening, whether it's on Apple or Spotify, or if you prefer to watch on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like this video, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you guys are excited about as college basketball season is now just mere days away. Monday, November 3rd, we get the season going for just about every team in the country, and it should be in all the teams. I think at least in the Mountain Time Zone will be in action, if not Monday, if by Thursday or Friday. So it should be a fun first week of college hoops, and we will be covering it all once the season does get underway. But we're still previewing some teams here. We've got 2 left to do, including today's episode, and I'm excited to welcome on Brendan Williams from Go Lopes Radio, the best source of independent Grand Canyon basketball coverage you can find. Brendan, how's it going? Appreciate you hopping on the show today.
Tyler, thanks for having me. Man, I'm excited. Like I've just been telling everyone, man, it's enough of the summer drama. Let's get some basketballs bouncing on the hardwood, and it's that time of the year, man. Love it.
Yeah, no better time of the year for us on this podcast. Obviously, we love basketball. We love talking about basketball from college to the NBA. We cover it all. And a team that I have not talked about a ton on the podcast. Obviously mentioned them, during the NCAA tournament when that was going on. They got bounced in the first round. I actually was at that game. I was watching it.
That's right. Opposite of Colorado State.
Yeah, so I was in Seattle covering the first round of the tournament, covering the Rams, and went out after I was done writing, went out to watch the GCU Maryland game, just to get a look at sitting with some of the Colorado State coaches, kind of see who the Rams will be playing. But just for you, how successful would you rate this Bryce Drew tenure? I mean, it's been a pretty much a whirlwind for the program the last 5 years or so. Like I said, making it 4 times now since the start of 2020. I mean, it's got to be awesome to cover this program with all the success they've been having. You mentioned before we started recording that still relatively a newcomer to college basketball at the D1 level, less than 15 years. So how fun has these last couple of years been with Coach Drew at the helm?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a ton of fun. I think, I would say the only downside, which is why this year is so exciting, is kind of getting through the WAC play. I would say, they're just nights that weren't necessarily full of inspiration and that juice that college basketball brings. So, totally made sense after GCU's success in the WAC to say, hey, we need, I think their goal is just to be around other good teams, other good universities, coaches, players. And, I think
programs that have invested similarly like they have in basketball. Yeah.
Correct. That's kind of been the goal. So I think that's what takes us and makes us so excited for this year. Obviously, a little bit of a swan song for a chapter of the Mountain West for now. But I mean, yeah, it's been a fun. It's crazy to think, when I went to school 2012, 2016, they make the transition with 2013 to Division I. You obviously got to sit your 4 years. Thunder Dan's in. He's a local legend here in the Valley. Dan Marley, who played for the Suns. And, that didn't go great. We can't sugarcoat it. Did not go great on multiple levels, multiple layers. Obviously, they didn't make an NCAA tournament once they could. And then obviously COVID happens. And when that happened, GCU is just kind of a natural, I don't want to say jumping off point, but opportunity to kind of have a little bit of changing of the guard. They bring Bryce in. Bryce was doing TV after having got fired from Vanderbilt. And it's really been a really good marriage between the two, Bryce and GCU. GCU obviously investing in its program heavily, between staff, facilities, support, obviously, players. We can comfortably talk about that now. And then Bryce, who, I think comes in from having a ton of mid-major success at Valpo. And then obviously the Vanderbilt thing didn't go great. There are probably some other reasons, but SEC's ruthless, man. It's don't get a long leash, as we've learned too with football. So, I think it was just perfect timing, perfect marriage. Not, if you wanted to really start nitpicking and get crazy, I believe they had one season where they won regular season title and the conference tournament, and Bryce Drew in the WAC. So, it's not like, I think, as someone said, it's not like they've necessarily been like a Gonzaga, or it's like they've just necessarily dominated it. Now they've won the WAC tournament 4 out of 5 years, played in the NCAA tournament, won a game in the NCAA tournament. So, not a ton to complain about there, but they've had a ton of success. And Bryce has, been able to kind of maneuver the challenges as everything has happened in college basketball, one-time transfer rule, two-time transfer rule, unlimited transfer rule, NIL, all these things have kind of got thrown at him in his tenure, and he's kind of taken it and ran with it. And so it's been really exciting just to see, the program grow, and then getting, I think just the word is excitement for the season, to get to be around, the Colorado States, to get to, play a game against Boise, San Diego State, with some NBA guys potentially over there. So there is some palpable excitement. So, yeah, I mean, again, like I said, this is as good as it gets right now. We're waiting for Monday. Just can't wait for it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the program really handling all of the changes really well. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of turnover the last couple of years, kind of year after year, and we'll get into the new look-ish roster again this year. I think of the team that played against Maryland in the NCAA tournament this past year, I think only 2 guys that played 10 or so, or that were kind of like part of the regular rotation, Mekhi Williams and Caleb Shaw, came off the bench, were the only 2 guys that are back. I mean, all 5 starters are gone. Most of them ran out of eligibility, but guys like Tyon Grant Foster somehow get another year of eligibility now at Gonzaga, and some other guys leave the program. Just how did you see the staff kind of go about rebuilding the roster once again, kind of building off another year in the NCAA tournament, so more exposure? Yeah. I mentioned some of the guys they brought in that are already getting preseason All Mountain West accolades, like Jaden Henley, like a Brian Moore Jr. Kind of how is this maybe even a step forward in terms of the guys they were able to bring in? Like, is this another caliber of transfer class for this GCU program?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Talent-wise, on the paper, right? It totally stands out, the mix of guys they've brought in, and then you talk about the technical freshman, F.A. Demerol, the big guy from Turkey, who's played a little bit of pro. So when you mix it all together and you look at it on paper, it is really good, and it's a ton of talent. Now, where it gets tough when you look at this roster, and I did this exercise knowing over the summer, hey, like these guys are leaving, these guys are graduating. We're looking at essentially rebuilding 90 to 95% of production. I went through all the mid-majors, we'll include the Mountain West teams that have had success last year, years before. And this would be really unprecedented for a team to come in with essentially no returning production, go to the portal from a mid-major level, and be able to compete. Now, if you're one of the big guys, you can obviously go and you can dip into a next level of talent pool. But the mid-majors, they've done it by growing internal. Yes, some teams lose guys. You can look at like a New Mexico, for instance, right? They lose Toppin, who, you wouldn't just say is a good player. He's a great player, right? Yeah. They backfill internally, right? And they still have a little bit of a core. So even if, teams lose guys, Colorado State as well, you can lose guys, but it does.
You can lose a nice Dave Stevens, but if you have a Nick Clifford on the roster, it kind of helps.
Who develops and gets a year. Yeah. And so this is unprecedented territory for the program, like without a doubt. Even the team 2 years ago that was really good that won the tournament game, you had Ray Harrison coming back, some other guys that, are kind of holdovers. And that stuff I think really matters. And again, another Colorado State point, which is why I'm maybe not as down on them as some other people, just because like they do roll over some things, some guys. And then obviously with the internal coaching hire, some of that applies. So it's going to be uncharted territory. The talent is really good. I mean, no secret, GCU, like we've said, has a ton of money. They're able to invest in their players, and they went out, they got an insane amount of talent. The exhibition games there were highs and lows. Again, all things considered, playing Baylor and USC, I think they accomplished what they wanted to, but, they're still going to have a massive learning curve when it comes to this group that, has to figure out a way to play together, and they're going to have to do this throughout the season. I'll tell you what, you better be ready to go by Jan 1, because, Mountain West is no joke, even in a quote down year, let's just say, for the Mountain West. So they've got a lot to figure out. I love the talent. I love the optionality, kind of the different lineups they can throw out there. But, they've even just looking at the exhibition, right? Like that starting five that they've gone with both games, like that needs some more time to mold and get together. And then, that's before we even start talking about other lineups and other options. So they have a long road ahead of them. It's going to be kind of an unprecedented path, I think. If you're a GCU fan, you're used to names coming back. So we'll see how it all gels together. It's going to be a day by day, I think, sort of thing. And Bryce has talked about that after the exhibition. So I think you have to be excited, though, about the talent, the high level. The last thing I'll say about that, I talked with assistant coach Mark Rogers this summer. I did a behind the program series. Those people who put in the work behind the scenes, and Mark does a lot of the recruiting. And it sounds really corny and cliche, but GCU really does care about this stuff. The high character. You have to be a fit for GCU. That's where we start. So you look at a guy like Nana Wusu-Wanane, goes to a prestigious high school, goes to Brown University. We're talking about high character guys. Brian Moore, who he's been at a few stops, but he had to go earn his way in JUCO, and then obviously had a ton of success at Norfolk. So they're big on the off the court things, and I think that maybe gives you a shorter road to that success and building that chemistry. But at the end of the day, the only way you can figure that stuff out is by getting on the court and playing together.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the exhibition so far. The program really challenging themselves. Losing by single digits to both Baylor and USC, two programs that are obviously investing heavily and have plenty of resources to do so. What have you liked, or any individuals that have stuck out to you so far? I know Dusty Stromer shot the ball pretty well in the USC game. Obviously, Gonzaga transfer who is probably going to play a big role for this team.
Yep.
Who have you liked so far out of the newcomers, and what this group can do? You mentioned highs and lows, just kind of what has stuck out to you.
Yeah, it's weird because, we didn't get to watch the Baylor game. So you just had to listen to it, the radio. And then obviously USC, I was there, and then you could watch. But, it's weird because you see the best version of each player, I think, individually, but it doesn't necessarily mean they were that best version. So, let's, for instance, talk Dusty. Dusty at Baylor, he hits, I think the thing that's really exciting about him is obviously he can shoot it, but maybe a little bit of late shot clock action. And that literally happened where it's 6 seconds on the shot clock. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Last year, obviously they had some really talented guys, but the bottom line was it wasn't a super efficient sort of machine, right? Like some guys weren't shooting well that could have and should have been shooting better, maybe not taking great shots. Dusty hits a fall away. So you're like, okay, I see what Dusty kind of looks like. He can come off screens, he can shoot, he can spread the floor, shoot the three, obviously an expanded role now coming from Gonzaga. So you see Dusty, you're like, that totally makes sense. Like I'm in. You see a guy like Brian Moore who can get in the paint. He's so patient. He gets to the spots, smaller guard, about 6 foot, from New York, kind of a New York point guard, if you will. And was so just kind of slithery, and he's so good he was finishing around Baylor guys. So you see that and you're like, okay. And then you see a guy like Henley, who has experience in the Mountain West, struggle with turnovers in both games, without a doubt. And, in Baylor, he plays really well, has 26 points, gets a ton of free throws, efficient from the floor. And then USC, you kind of see the other side of it, a lot of turnovers, maybe takes some bad shots, was handling the ball a ton and was not making great decisions. So you just see, I think what you see with these guys is you see the potential. F.A. Demirel against USC. So I'm talking about this guy that comes from Turkey who's this pro. Oh my gosh, he gets 2 fouls in, I swear, 2 minutes, right? And you're like, oh no, hate that. Comes right back in, fouls right again. Okay, so he's got to go back to the bench. Comes back in, fouls again, and you're like, no way. I mean, he played probably 8 minutes, and it's like and he did have an and 1
minutes per the box score.
Yeah, it was brutal and no flow. He was from the get go. It was just over for him, right? And then I think the last guy to talk about the highs and lows is Nana Wusu-Wanane. 8 offensive rebounds, I believe 16 total rebounds against USC. a really good, big, talented USC, including, at times they're playing Gabe Dines in there, who's 7'5" from Youngstown State. I mean, it's truly jarring to see in person, by the way. Like truly incredible how tall he is. And 8 offensive rebounds, insane, right? But he doesn't shoot the ball well, took some bad shots, in my opinion, still figuring that stuff out. Obviously, he didn't play last year, so he maybe a little rust there, just getting back in the mix. So I think what my takeaway from these games are you see the best versions of what these guys can bring. And then you see this idea like, yeah, these guys have only been playing together for a few months. And, FA just picked up his whole life not even 2 months ago and moved all the way across the world. I mean, right from Turkey to Phoenix. And then, Nana is coming off an injury. Henley's kind of trying to find his way as potentially handling the ball a little bit more. So, yeah, you just see those ups and downs and you see where it makes sense. Like they started out down 15. I think it's 21-6 against USC. And I think about 8 to 9 minutes later, they had the lead. So you just see the hot and cold. And I think maybe as time goes on, you're going to see those cold stretches be maybe a little less worse. And then, maybe you can sustain those better stretches a little bit longer, but it's a work in progress. Bryce was harping on that. I've been trying to tell GCU fans, like, work in progress. Also, it's an exhibition game. We cannot, be flipping tables. And then, like you said, at the end of the day, this is USC and Baylor. I mean, how crazy is that to just say, if you had told me when I was there in school, like, hey, in 10, 12 years, GCU is going to be playing USC and Baylor. They're going to lose both games by double digits, and you'd have things to nitpick.
And you're getting USC to come to Phoenix for a game, too, before the season. So, that's pretty impressive.
At the end of the day, I think there's a lens to see it through. But, yeah, there's some things I think they definitely have to improve on for sure.
Yeah, they've got a couple weeks to do so. I mean, they opened the season with Purdue Fort Wayne on Monday. You got Youngstown State, Northern Illinois. Then it's not the most exciting first 2 weeks of the schedule. I mean, I think that St. Louis game could be pretty intriguing as another pretty talented mid-major program. But then you've got the Acrisure Classic in Palm Desert, which I think is kind of the highlight of the non-conference schedule for GCU, sure, where you play Utah in the first game, and then you're playing either Iowa or Ole Miss in the second game. You're guaranteed to be playing 2 high major Power 4, if you want, quote unquote, conference teams. And then you've got Oklahoma State coming to Phoenix as well in early December before, the Mountain West schedule starts really early this year, like even before Christmas, with GCU going up to Laramie.
Potential trap game. We've been calling that out from the get-go. Just, oh my gosh, right before they have another game after that before Christmas at home, by the way. And that has to be the week that it's probably the coldest in Laramie the whole year, by the way. So,
and honestly, you might be dealing with like a foot of snow, to be honest. I was just up in Laramie this past weekend covering football, and thankfully the weather was good on the drive to and from Denver up I-25. But I can imagine December 20th.
Get out of there with a win and just get back home.
The Wyoming team's going to be pretty tough. We had Coach Sundance Wicks on the podcast a couple weeks ago as he's previewing his team. He's excited about that. But just kind of what are you looking to see improvement-wise before maybe the MTE Thanksgiving week, and then during that, kind of what tests could that bring as this group gets ready for, like we said, an early part of the Mountain West schedule coming right before Christmas?
Yeah, I think the thing I've kind of been harping on, and this is from what some of the things that Bryce has said and, has kind of proclaimed with this group that's going to be different than last year, is the ball is going to move a lot more. We're not going to rely, obviously GCU had Tyon Grant Foster last year, 2 really incredible years at the program, and you could rely on him for, 12 to, on a bad night, to, 25 to even 30 points, right, on a good night. So you could really rely on that for scoring. This team's going to be a lot different. It's going to be super balanced. Different guys do different things well. They're going to have to work together. And I'll be honest, right, Bryce has talked about that ball movement. And assist isn't the only way you can measure that. There's other ways to measure the ball movement. But I'll be honest, the first 2 games, it doesn't seem like that's happening a ton. Bryce has said in practice it is happening. But, there's got to be – it feels very stagnant. Jaden Henley's been handling the ball a ton. In my opinion, I think that's by purpose, getting him some reps. So if they want to go at that bigger lineup, he's about 6'7", really long arms. And, I don't think they can do it for any sort of long-term stretch in a game. But here and there, I think there could be some fun lineups with it. But they're going to have to move the ball. They're going to have to find easier offense because they have been grinding it out on the offensive end, shooting a lot of free throws, which is a Bryce Drew special, right? They've always shot a ton of free throws. Ray Harrison, Tyon Grant Foster. That's just kind of always been the reality. But they're going to have to find a way to get some easy offense. I think we've got some, some better threes that can be taken. I think they've got to get out and run a little bit more. You got a guy like Brian Moore Jr., who's so good in transition. Jaden Henley, we want to see those turnovers go down. Well, instead of slowing, not saying he's slowing the ball down, but instead of handling the ball a ton in the half court, let's get out and let's get you in space. If you're 6'7" with the ball, I'm going to like you a lot more when you're handling the ball opposed to if the defense is going to be set. So I think just the ball movement has to improve a lot. And that just seems like something, when you talk about a team who's going to return a ton of guys, that's going to be a plug and play thing. They can do night in, night out, and that's across the sport for anybody, right? Even if you're playing basketball with friends, like if you just play with 3 or 4 random guys, some pickup, you're going to be like, what's going on here? And it's the same thing that applies where if you have a group of friends you played with forever, what the guy's going to do, when he makes a face like he wants to go back door. Same thing applies here, I think, where this team is going to have to just gel together and find a way on the offensive end. The defense, I think, has such a high floor. They've got the right personnel. Bryce, they guard so hard and so tough. It sounds super cliche. They make life really tough. They're not maybe like a traditional, like they're not going to have I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a good example. Like a Magoon Guath. They're not going to, feed everything to like Guath, right? And that's like they just
not like one heliocentric guy in the middle of the defense. Yeah. As
a group, they cohesively guard really tough. And, I've watched a few practices, man. It is no joke in there. It almost looks like football practice. But so they're going to have to find a way to get some easy offense, move the ball, get everyone involved, and get people doing the things I think they do well. I've seen Nana maybe taking a few too many threes. A guy who has eight offensive rebounds, I still think was a little too far from the basket on the offensive end, maybe settling a little bit there. So getting him more involved. So we'll see how it progresses, but I think we've got to see that ball really start ripping and moving around for them to have a little bit more success. And like you said, they've got some great opportunities to do that before that big first road test at St. Louis, which is going to be, I don't want to say, if you want to make the tournament as an at-large, you kind of have to win it. But honestly, if you kind of want to make the tournament as an at-large, because otherwise they haven't scheduled super tough, you kind of got to win that game. So all things, you got to prep and get ready for that game and see if you can snag one on the road there.
All right, Brendan, this has been a great conversation. Before I get you out of here, just kind of what are your expectations for this team? I mentioned at the top of the podcast, they're picked 4th in the preseason poll. I think there are 6-7 teams in the Mountain West that could be NCAA tournament teams again this year. I mean, it's typical, national stuff before the year, but you look at, preseason bracketology and there's 1, maybe 2 at Mountain West teams. And we just know every year there's going to be more than that. We saw that even last year. And I don't think there's going to be 6 teams, but I think there are 6 or 7 caliber teams that could make the NCAA tournament, all the way down to Colorado State, who came in at 7th in the preseason poll. I think all of those 6 teams, or all the 7 teams of the top half, could be NCAA tournament teams. And obviously GCU is one of them. What are your expectations for this group, and how do they manage a much more tougher conference schedule, like you mentioned at points too?
Yeah, I see it in 2 parts. So the first thing for me is I'm a little more pessimistic on the season-long grind in the Mountain West. I'm very nervous, and
it's understandable.
It's going to be really unprecedented territory. I was just talking about something the other day. I think they have 1 top 100 true road win under Bryce Drew. And here's the thing.
There's going to be a lot of chances to get more than that this year.
And so obviously a different team, different program. They've invested money, accordingly to size and all that. I get it. But, you just start, we were joking about that Wyoming game, right? Oh my gosh. If that game catches you off guard, the math gets super hard to trying to win a Mountain West title. I hate to say that takes you out of it right away, but it's like the math just does not math if you start dropping games that you can't drop, because
especially there's so many tough environments in this conference too.
Utah State, that's an impossible place to win. You've got some elevation in some places. You got to go to Viejas, and then that's before we talk about you've got to protect home court. Like you're going to be a dog on a home court against 2 or 3 teams that are going to be really, really good. So I just think that'll take a little bit of an adjustment. And like I've talked about, this team getting better throughout the year. So I'd say I'm a little more pessimistic. I like that 4 spot. Before we heard about some of the UNLV injuries, I had GCU at 5 behind UNLV. I'd move them ahead of UNLV for sure. The UNLV injuries are just really adding up, and I don't know if those are something you can really come back from. So I like them in that spot. In my opinion, and this is really unbiased, and I'm really being honest here, I picked them to win the Mountain West Conference tournament in the first year. And it sounds a little, I promise it's not arrogant. It's really an unbiased pick, but
I mean, they've won the WAC tournament. Even when, like you said, at times where they haven't been the preseason, the regular season champion. Yeah.
Yeah, they've won it as a 5 seed. They've won it as a 2 seed, won it as a 1 seed, and they know how to win. Bryce knows how to kind of move all the right chess pieces. The strength and conditioning program is incredible. You talk about Makai Williams. I think he's put on about 15 pounds of muscle year over year. So, I mean, the strength and conditioning program, the facilities, all that supports and leads up into that week. And different environment, like without a question, there would probably be 100 non-GCU fans all week, right, that go to the WAC tournament outside of GCU. So it'll be a lot different, but I do like this team's chances. The goal is you do not want to be a Wednesday team. You want to be a Thursday team. Even if that means you got the 4 seed, you'll take that all day long to get that extra day of rest. So I picked them to win the Mountain West Conference tournament. Obviously, that then gets them into the NCAA tournament, but I am a little nervous about how this Mountain West grind is going to go, especially as they figure things out. But I love their chances come March. I think the talent's really, really off the charts. The thing I would leave you with is I mentioned F.A. Demerol. Maybe take a note now what you've seen of him. If you watch the USC game, maybe watch a game early in the season. I want everyone to come back late February, early March, check in on him, how he's doing, because I think he's going to progress. I think he's going to be a massive force come down the stretch. For Mountain West play, and a big factor in them making a run in Vegas.
Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff. I'm definitely going to be interested in watching this team, especially at that MTE in Palm Desert, like I said. But Brendan, you do great stuff with Go Loves Radio. Definitely the go-to source for all things GCU basketball. And I'm going to be following along this year, and you will certainly be a regular guest on this podcast as long as GCU is doing
whenever you need it.
As long as we think GCU is going to perform like they do. And I love the hot takes. I could see it. I mean, Colorado State kind of ran the table, got hot at the end of last year, and went on to win the Mountain West Championship. Tournament championship. So anything can happen in this league, and I'm super excited that GCU is going to be a part of it. And I'm super excited, Brendan, to have had you on the podcast today. So thanks again for doing this.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Just one episode left of our college hoops season preview series. We've got the Colorado Buffaloes coming on, the program I cover and talk about probably, or am around the most here with my day job at the Denver Gazette. So stay tuned for that on Monday, and we will have plenty of coverage from the first week of the college season. Going to be getting back to talking about the NBA as well. Got to see the Nuggets in person for the first time this week. We'll be seeing them in person again next week as well, with my guy Nick Clifford coming back to Colorado for his first NBA game in his home state. So a lot to look forward to here on the podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify or Apple, wherever you prefer to listen, or if you're watching over on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, leave a comment. All that stuff is super appreciated by me. So thanks again to Brendan Williams from Go Loves Radio for joining us on this episode of Basketball in the Mountains. And thanks all of you for listening and watching, and stay tuned for what's next. Enjoy the weekend of basketball.